I'm 95 years old now, and I can feel the edges of my life closing in. Not in a dramatic way, nothing sudden, just a quiet narrowing. The days are shorter, not because of the sun, but because there's less of me left to fill them. I wake up slower, I sit longer, I forget what I stood up for, and I think about time, not the way I used to, as something I could spend or save. Now it feels like something I misplaced, like I had it in my hands for years, and somehow, without noticing, I let it slip through my fingers. I used to say, I've got time. I said it like it was a fact, like it was guaranteed. I didn't know how wrong that was. When I was young, 20, maybe 21, I wasn't reckless. That's the strange part. I wasn't wild or careless. I was careful, thoughtful. I didn't rush into things. People used to say that about me. He's steady. He takes his time. It sounded like a compliment. I had a job back then. Nothing special. A desk, some files, a clock on the wall that ticked louder than it should have. I remember watching that clock sometimes, not because I was bored, but because I felt like I was waiting for something. I just didn't know what. I told myself that job was temporary, just something to hold on to while I figured out what I really wanted. I said that for years, quietly, casually, like it didn't matter. But it did. The problem is, when you keep telling yourself something is temporary, you don't treat it like it matters. You don't invest in it. You don't question it. You just let it continue. That's how years pass without you noticing. I met a woman when I was 27. Her name was Elise. I don't know why I still remember the way she said my name, but I do. Soft, like it wasn't something to rush. She had a calmness to her, not the kind that comes from having an easy life, but the kind that comes from knowing what you want. We didn't fall into anything dramatic. No big declarations. No sudden passion. It was quieter than that. We spent time together. Walks in the evening, sitting in small cafes, talking about ordinary things. But there was something underneath it, something steady. She asked me once, "Where do you see yourself in 10 years?" I remember laughing a little, not because it was funny, but because I didn't have an answer. I said something vague. "I'll figure it out." She didn't push, she just nodded. That was her way. She never forced anything. She just waited to see who you were. And I think she saw me more clearly than I saw myself. We stayed together for a while, a couple of years, maybe more. Time blends together now, but I remember the feeling of it. Safe, easy. And I remember the hesitation. She wanted to move forward, not in a dramatic way, just a decision, a direction, something that said, this is my life, and I'm choosing it. Not because I didn't care about her. I did, in my own way. But I kept thinking, what if something better comes along? What if I'm not ready? What if I choose wrong? So I didn't choose at all. That's something no one tells you when you're young. Not choosing is still a choice, and it has consequences. She didn't leave all at once. It wasn't a sudden goodbye. It was slower than that. Fewer calls, longer silences, a different tone in her voice. One day, she just wasn't there anymore. No argument. No final scene. Just absence. I told myself it wasn't meant to be, that we wanted different things, that it was better this way. Those are easy things to say when you don't want to face the truth. The truth was, I let her go because I thought I had more time to decide, more time to be ready. I didn't understand that some things don't come back. My 30s passed quietly. That's the only way I can describe them. Nothing terrible happened. Nothing especially good either. I worked. I paid my bills. I had conversations that didn't go very deep. I made plans I never followed through on. A friend of mine, David, once asked me to join him in starting a business. He was excited about it. You could hear it in his voice. He had this energy, like he was already living in the future he wanted. I remember sitting across from him, nodding, listening, and then I said, "Let me think about it." I always needed to think about things. He didn't wait. He started it without me. It took off, slowly at first, then steadily. Years later, he had something real. Not just money, but something that belonged to him. Something he built. I visited him once. He looked tired, but there was something else there too. Something I didn't recognize in myself. Purpose, maybe. I went back to my job the next day. Same desk, same clock. I told myself I was being sensible, that stability mattered more than risk. But if I'm honest, I was just afraid. Afraid of choosing wrong. Afraid of failing. So I chose nothing. In my 40s, something started to shift inside me. Not in a loud way. It wasn't a breakdown or a crisis. It was quieter than that. A kind of distance. I would sit in a room with people and feel separate. Like I was slightly removed from everything. Watching, but not really part of it. Conversations felt repetitive. Days felt interchangeable. I remember coming home one evening, sitting in my chair, and realizing I couldn't remember anything specific about that day. Not one moment that stood out. That scared me more than I expected, because it meant my life was becoming forgettable. My parents passed away around that time. First my father, then my mother a few years later. I remember standing in their house after everything was gone. Furniture, photos, all packed away or given up. The rooms felt smaller. I walked through each one slowly, like I was trying to hold on to something. But there wasn't much to hold on to. I thought, this is what time does. It erases things. I didn't realize I was helping it. I kept living the same way, same habits, same patterns, telling myself I would change eventually. Eventually is a dangerous word. It stretches out in front of you, like it has no end. But it does. By the time I reached my 50s, people around me were starting to slow down, talking about retirement, about what they would finally do with their time. Travel, hobbies, family. I listened, but I didn't have those plans. I didn't have a family. I didn't have something I had been building toward. All I had was time, and I still didn't know what to do with it. I retired at 65. There was a small gathering, a cake, some polite applause, a few speeches about how reliable I had been. Reliable. That was the word they used. I smiled, thanked them, shook hands, and then I went home. I remember sitting down that evening and feeling something I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. Emptiness. Not because I had nothing to do, but because I had nothing that felt like mine. All those years I thought I was preserving my life. I was just delaying it. And now there was nothing left to delay. The days became long after that. Quiet. Repetitive. I tried to fill them. Books, walks, small routines, but there was a weight to it. A sense that I had missed something essential. In my 70s, I got a call. It was about Elise. She had died. I hadn't seen her in over 40 years. For a long time after that, I just sat in silence, not crying, just still. I thought about her question. What do you want your life to look like? I finally had an answer. I wanted a life with her in it. I wanted the small things we almost had, the ordinary days we never finished. But by then, it wasn't an answer anymore. It was a realization. That's the thing about clarity. It doesn't always arrive when it's useful. Sometimes it waits until there's nothing left you can do with it. Now I sit here, at 95, with more time behind me than ahead, and I can see my life more clearly than I ever did while I was living it. Not in big moments, in small ones. The conversations I avoided, the decisions I postponed, the people I assumed would still be there later. 75 years, not lost all at once, just spent without noticing. I don't have children. No one calls. No one asks about my past. Not that there's much to tell. Most of my life exists in routines that don't mean much now. What stays with me are the things I didn't do. That's what follows you. Not your failures, your absences. There's a quiet loneliness in that. Not sharp, not overwhelming, just steady, like a low hum you can't turn off. I don't blame anyone. That wouldn't make sense. This wasn't something that happened to me. It was something I allowed. One small delay at a time. If you're listening to this, I won't tell you how to live your life. I don't think I've earned that. But I will tell you what I learned too late. Time doesn't feel like it's passing when you're in it. That's the danger. It feels like there's always more chances, more moments, more later. But later isn't as far away as it seems. And sometimes it doesn't come at all. If there's something you've been putting off, something you've been meaning to say, or decide, or begin, don't wait for certainty. It doesn't come. And even if it does, it might come when it's no longer youthful. I used to think I was being careful with my life. I see now I was just avoiding it. And there's a cost to that, a quiet one, a permanent one. I'm not afraid of dying. That part feels natural in a way. What stays with me is something else. The feeling of standing at the end of a long life and realizing it never quite started. At 95, there isn't much left to change. No big decisions waiting. No second chances. Just memories. And the spaces between them. If this meant something to you, hold on to that feeling for a moment. Not for me. For yourself. Because I had that moment once. And I let it pass. I thought I had more time. I was wrong.